we'd like to offer the upholders of this status quo viewpoint yet another major challenge. In Western Australia, during the live telecast of Apollo 11 in 1969, many viewers in that region of Australia, including Una Ronald, were to have an extraordinary experience.
When this moon landing was in the offing, I for one decided to stay up to watch the live telecast, and I did, and we saw a lot of activity on the television screen from the control centre, a lot of anticipation, a lot of excitement.
But before we get to what happens next, we need to know how the TV coverage of Apollo 11 was supposed to have reached our screens.
Just shortly before Armstrong stepped on the moon, you can actually see the switch take place where it goes from the stark black and white to a little better. And they stayed with the television signal from Honeysuckle Creek, so when Armstrong stepped on the surface of the moon, it actually came through Australia, but at the time it was reported as being through Goldstone. The voice came through Goldstone, but the TV pictures came from Australia.
It appears that correct information was apparently withheld at the time as to what was supposed to be happening with Apollo 11's reception.
As I watched this person walking a Coke bottle in the lower right quadrant of the screen, it seemed to be kicked over and rolled across. And for me, that was just astounding, and I exclaimed aloud at the time, "It's a fake, it's a setup, they're not on the moon at all, look at this, it's a Coke bottle." And they were going to broadcast the same film again in the morning, and I phoned several of my friends to watch, and they hadn't. But they were going to watch in the morning. And I waited, of course, to say, well, did you see it? But it didn't happen. I watched the second telecast. There was no Coke bottle, which led me to believe at the time that it must have been edited out. I was convinced it was fake, but why? Why it should be fake? Why such a setup? 2 or 3 others of my acquaintance did see it. Furthermore, there were letters written to the West Australian newspaper. They mentioned the Coke bottle. And I waited for it to brew up. I thought, my goodness, there's going to be a glorious ding-dong here going on about this Coke bottle. But suddenly there was nothing at all. And I presume that those who saw it denied their own senses, as people will do. Began to think, well, they couldn't have seen it, or perhaps it was there and that was okay. They'd thrown some rubbish out of the spacecraft or something like that. It couldn't have been. People will invent all kinds of solutions to what is not explained.
What Una Ronald and her friends did not know was that Western Australia was a special case concerning the reception of the initial Apollo images. Contrary to the procedure for that continent set up by Honeysuckle Creek and Parkes, together with NASA and Australian TV, the Apollo 11 images were neither sent directly to Western Australia via satellite, nor was there a broadband link from Sydney in 1969. These images had to be sent over to Perth from Sydney by other means and then retransmitted locally. So for an engineer in the loop, aware of the hoaxed live TV coverage, there was motive for adding further additions to the scene. Moreover, here was an opportunity for someone in the know to manipulate the material before transmission across Western Australia. What does Una Ronald, who was in Western Australia at the time, think about these attempts at fakery?
When I saw the Coke bottle, for me, the whole moon landing from that point was a fake. It was a setup. And if it was a setup, it must have been filmed somewhere on Earth. And it would have been filmed, to my way of thinking, in America at some lonely site, or alternatively in a huge indoor set, somewhere where they could be private, be secluded, be able to produce this quite passable picture of someone walking on the moon.
So here we go. Here's the Crow 777 footage. We're going to do them in the order they were filmed. And again, my footage falls before or after equinoxes. This is the Holy Grail footage. If I had not shot this particular footage, all footage would have been dismissible by the event. Just the camera pan and the way that it was shot allowed me to use a measuring stick against all other footage that I saw, that we're looking at something that has gone unreported by NASA, which is not at the bottom. The wave comes in, it goes out of frame, and then catches up to the camera, which is all. Not to mention that it's an organic wave and digital intervention, 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 that it's an organic wave and digital instruments don't fail that way. Just after the first wave begins, 4 seconds, there is a UFO shadow of some type that crosses the upper left limb. I wonder if that's some kind of a satellite device that is involved in this some way. Here's the second wave, filmed March 9th, 2014. On all my footage, I've been able to measure the angle of the wave, which I present you here. I don't know whether the other scopes were polar aligned or equatorial aligned, so I don't really have the ability to do that. And truthfully, they're also zoomed in, so it would be a bit difficult to understand the orientation of the moon, although I suppose we could look at a model for that night. Okay, here comes the wave. There's wave number 1. And there's the second wave. And this is one of the unusual filmings where the moon is not very near full on that. Here's wave, third wave, March 14, 2014. On a couple of these, and I've forgotten which they are, I would have to go through again. The waves look a bit different. They look a little more flat than every other filming that I've done, and that's on 2 of the clips. But you can determine that for yourself. And as you can see, after the 2012 filming, they became much more difficult to see, more clear, traveling more quickly. Okay, it's going to come in from the top, and I'll cue you right when it's going to start. I have a marker down on this one. Okay, and it's getting ready to come in from the top here. And there's the first wave. And you can see it bowing around the moon. Much clearer and quicker wave. Here's the fourth wave that I filmed on March 14, 2014. Now you notice the look of the moon changes a bit, and that is due to the way I am filming and how much light is on the moon, whether I'm using my city light filter. There's a few things. So some of them have kind of a more blue look, which indicates I'm using the city light filter because there's a need for that on that particular night. All right, I have a marker down on this one as well, and I'll indicate when the wave is going to come in from the top. And here it comes. There's the first wave from the upper left, and there's the second wave, and that is much quicker and much clearer than if you compare that to the previous waves or even the 2012 footage. Now this next one is kind of a special wave to me. It was very difficult to see. 4 of us were looking at the monitor because we were filming the eclipse on this night, April 14, 2014. These waves occurred as the eclipse was beginning in earnest. I may do more work on the eclipses because I think they're manipulated. I have some evidence that shows this in past clips, but when I filmed the last solar eclipse, I really saw some things that got me thinking. And here it comes from the top. There's the first wave coming from the upper right. There it goes down off the bottom. Here comes the second one, passing the equator, down to the lower left. It's a very subtle wave, and as I indicated, there was an eclipse going on as this happened. All right, the 2012 footage, which we're going to go over here, is the most important footage I've ever shot, and just because of the way this footage was shot, it allowed me to understand, after I figured it out, that this is a filmed event. Look at the bottom, and I'm going to run with some filters first to show, the prominence of the wave over the face so that you can see the curvature. And then I'm going to break this out so that you can see the energy pulse that happens on the lower left limb of the moon just as the wave is about to begin. And bear in mind, 4 seconds after the first wave, an object goes up the upper left limb. So here we go down to the bottom left to see the pulse that occurs. There's backwards and forwards, and you can see the curvature of the pulse that happens, the energy pulse. Now as it goes up a little, you're going to see a sweep across the face of the moon. There it is backwards. It goes from left to right. You can see just kind of an energy sweep occur. All right, here we go again. And you can see the energy sweep. And then the wave starts up. And you can completely measure the bow of this going around the sphere. It's a measurable thing. And if you consider that each pixel has a value in distance, it's probably quite a bow. The problem is I don't know what the distance of the moon is, and I have a feeling it's much closer than we've been told. But saying that and proving that are two different things. The grid overlay matches the tilt of the wave from our point of view. Here's at 150% the angle from our point of view of the wave traveling over the lunar surface, if there is such a thing. Here we go at 100%. This is real time, real speed. There's a slight contrast manipulation here. So, I mean, we're in a new era here. Where are the space agencies? If I know this and all these other people have filmed it, this is a known thing, and that's all there is to it. This is something that's being hidden. You know, so many people have come and seen this since 2012, and they're from all walks of life, professionals. I've even been contacted by 4 people from observatories who have told me that they are directed at the observatories they are currently or have worked at in the past not to look at the moon unless they are directed to do so. Right here I'm showing that the wave goes out of frame, then catches up to the camera. This has always been proof that it's a filmed event. Even though I showed this, people have, badgered me non-stop and ignored this evidence, but it means what it means. There it is. There it is, catching up to the camera. That has always been bulletproof evidence that I knew and understood that this was a real event, and I stuck to my guns, and now we have confirmation on a level that's just not easily dismissible.